Inclusion or exclusion, are white men being left behind?
Oh, this is a big one.
It really is.
I've definitely sat in rooms where I felt uncomfortable for the white males in that room, and I didn't think I would necessarily understand or say that or think that.
As a white man of a certain age, can you say anything in this conversation? Can you advocate for certain groups? Oftentimes, because of poor demonstration of what equity looks like, people have been shut down.
The room is full of really everyone but white males. A lot of the decision makers in organisations and a lot of the people that hold budget and a lot of the people that, you know, can make a change are white males. So if anything,
Okay, so this time around we've got inclusion or exclusion, are white men being left behind?
oh, this is a big one.
It really is. Go for it.
Oh,
Scarlett. Are white men being
Mac.
left behind?
Are white men being left behind? My answer to that would be no, they're not being left behind. I think far from. I think the statistics show us that. However, have I been in environments or have I had candidates come and speak to me and say, I'm not going to get picked for the role because I know now I've got everything's going against me? Has that happened? Many occasions. Does that feel uncomfortable for me? Extremely. And I don't think it's true, actually, either. Not necessarily.
I was going to ask you, is it perception? Is it reality? Do people perceive that they're being left behind rather than the statistics showing that?
I think it is more of a perception, yeah. Have I seen it happen though? You know, where somebody that, you know, I've been on hiring panels before and maybe two candidates have scored the same and the company's actually really wanting to move to a more diverse workforce and that person sits within some kind of demographic. Have I seen that happen and that choice being made? I have. So I have, but I can only think of 2 occasions, and I've got 17 years of experience. So I wouldn't say it's a norm.
Okay.
But I've definitely sat in rooms where I felt uncomfortable for the white males in that room, and I didn't think I would necessarily understand or say that or think that, and I can touch on that in a bit. But what do you think, first of all?
Similar, I think it's a perception that people have, and I think a lot of it is because of the narrative. Like, there's a lot of media spotlight on diversity and inclusion. I think people are amplifying this kind of, you know, the last 5 years have been a little bit of a bubble in terms of diversity and inclusion being a focus. So I think people have honed in on that and essentially exaggerated it to say, like, now that we focused on it for 4 or 5 years, and let's be real, we haven't really focused on it. I mean, we've looked at some things that have helped people from underrepresented, marginalised backgrounds get into the workplace. But actually, have we seen year-on-year progression? Have we seen equitable pay? Have we seen all of these structural things that point to equity being embedded? No, we haven't. We've seen a lot of like superficial tokenry gestures to some extent. We've seen awards, we've seen badges, we've
talked about it.
Events. yeah. Have we seen systemic change?
No,
clearly not.
I think we've seen a slight move, a slight shift, but nowhere to the degree that maybe is perceived. And that's where it goes back, because I think there's so much talk around inclusion and belonging and diversity. There's a lot of talk, but the actual walk and the actual action is very minimal. Absolutely. On the most part. So I would agree.
Yeah. And I think what has happened in that conversation, I think the way it's been had has been so, I'm going to use this word, it's slightly inflammatory, but it's been quite aggressive to some extent, where I think there's a lot of white men that have felt beaten down by the conversation. It's not been an inclusive conversation. It's not been a conversation where everybody can give their opinion about what's gone wrong, what we can learn from. I think a lot of people have felt that they're being told off in that conversation. That can be quite a weird situation, especially for men that genuinely feel they've done nothing wrong or genuinely feel like they've been allies to underrepresented people.
Yeah.
If somebody just comes at you and it feels like a bit of an attack, you then start to feel slightly silenced. So you know, as a man, as a white man of a certain age, can you say anything in this conversation? Can you advocate for certain groups? You know, do you even have a voice in that room? And oftentimes, because of, from my perspective, like poor facilitation and a poor demonstration of what equity looks like, people have been shut down.
Yeah. And I think not even just shut down, I think not even got a look in or feel uncomfortable to speak, because then they're almost nervous, like, oh, if I'm going to say that, is it going to offend? We've heard that many a time, haven't we? I don't know how to say it correctly, or should it be saying it like this? I'm just not going to say anything at all. And it is hard, because I've been in environments where people are talking about their lived experience. There's conversations that have been had that are so valid, you know, and necessary. But naturally, if I was the white male in that room, and I've reflected on that quite a few times, I'd feel quite uncomfortable, because it's not me personally, but I'd think, oh, okay, well, this person's talking about a terrible experience or something that's happened, and she or he, or, you know, whoever that person is saying that, you know, the white male, or I've experienced this from, and it is uncomfortable. And you and I ran an event a few years ago.
I was going to raise that as well.
Were you going to raise it? Go on, you raise it.
No,
it. Go on.
So
go for it.
The event was interesting in the lack of white men in the room. The lack of men in the room, actually, generally.
Yeah.
But specifically the lack of white men. And I think there was a question posed by, was it a panelist or an audience member?
An audience member, I think.
An audience member that was very much pointed.
She was very vocal.
Very, very vocal.
Yeah, she was excellent.
Yeah.
But it was for me, it was a bit too vocal. It was slightly uncomfortable.
It was slightly too direct, the question, and it was kind of to the tone of, as a man, and I think she pointed someone out, or a couple of people out, and said, you know, as a man, how can you be more of an ally?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Literally that, yeah. What are you doing to further equality, diversity, and inclusion? And I think to put people on the spot like that can be quite uncomfortable. And credit to the person. I think they gave a really good response.
Yeah, excellent. And what happened on the back of that, I naturally asked people for feedback, just even the people that I know. And somebody that was in the room said, I was one of few white males in a room where we're really actually focused on a session that's inclusive of everyone. And actually we kind of wanted as many white males in that room as possible. Actually, that was kind of the point of it, to really, you know, have beautiful, beautiful conversations around belonging and inclusivity. And he said, I felt really uncomfortable being there. And it would make me question if I wanted to come. By the way, it was a great event. Just to be clear, it was a fantastic event. We had brilliant feedback. It was a fantastic event. But he said, it was the only piece of feedback that wasn't positive, though it stuck with me. And he said, I'd question if I kind of wanted to come into the environment again, because I don't know what I could do more. And that was it was a younger guy. And that for me was sad, actually.
Absolutely, because I think it does take a lot of bravery to step into those places and those spaces. And oftentimes I think, I can only speak for myself, but as somebody from a typically underrepresented background, especially working in energy and utilities, I didn't see it as bravery stepping into those places because it was part of my job. But actually, if there was something extracurricular, it would often take a little bit of bravery to say, okay, I'm going to this. It's not the day job. It's slightly outside of my comfort zone. And if you are in an environment where you don't feel safe and you don't feel supported and you don't feel like you have the luxury of people wanting you to win in that space, it can feel quite isolating. I think, we have to be mindful of the impact it has on people that are stepping in as allies and that want to be, quote unquote, progressive.
Neither of us are white males, but we are in environments where we're having these conversations where I can speak for myself. The majority of my allies and the majority of my clients, and to a degree, the near majority of our candidates are white males. So that is the majority of people that I'm generally speaking to in terms of that demographic, right? All different backgrounds, all different things, but that sort of demographic is actually the case and are the biggest allies of our business. Is there any advice or any thoughts that you would have or that you would share to those individuals navigating, or what may feel like they're navigating, a certain inclusion landscape at the moment?
I think it's a good question. I think before I touch on that, I wanted to really question I guess not question, maybe analyze the spectrum of individuals that you've got in this conversation, because I think there are the allies, and like yourself, I'm privileged to have quite a few white male middle-aged middle class allies that really get it. And something I always say about them is that they don't need to get it. Like, they've done pretty well for themselves. Like, there's no need for them to really think about anyone else, but actually credit to them, they do.
It's important to them, I think, as humans, right?
Absolutely. But I think on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people that are completely anti it, and again, this is going to sound really weird, but I have a lot of sympathy for them, because actually it's possible in this country to grow up in an environment where you don't see different, you don't see ethnic minorities, you don't see people that look differently from you, you don't even necessarily see women in progressive positions or in leadership positions. So it's absolutely reasonable for somebody to go 30, 40 years of their life not necessarily challenging the stereotypes that they've built up over these years. And it can be quite uncomfortable for them to then, at the age of 35, 40, 45, 50, 60 even, then be confronted with this messaging that is, essentially you're a bad person because you've not gone on this inclusion journey, or you've used the wrong words, or it can
which we don't believe, just to be clear. That's not what we're saying.
I mean, I'll disagree with that as well. I don't necessarily carte blanche say that it's not the case. That there are some bad people out there.
100%.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to be political, but there
are
say
what you want to say.
The Donald Trumps of this world that absolutely have had every opportunity to understand diversity, and just refuse to really.
And there are those leaders. It's interesting you touch on that person, because it's a certain character type, right? And I know he's very extreme in his behaviours, but actually both you and I are dealing with a lot of senior leaders, and there are absolutely that kind of character profile type of leader that I'm used to interacting with a lot, and I'm confident that you are as well. So there is these extremes, there is no doubt about it, right here, right now, that we're still navigating.
And to kind of,
as well as the naivety.
100%. And to go back to the kind of my sympathetic nature, and I'm not always sympathetic, but in this case I am. And I was delivering a session a while ago, and a white middle-aged man said, we were talking about intersectionality, and he said, it's funny that you mentioned intersectionality, because I would rather be a black lesbian woman with a disability than a middle-aged white man from a low socioeconomic background. And I was like, would you really, forget all of the politics and all of the rhetoric that's out there, but
I have clients that would say that. I'm confident. Or
I'm confident they'd say it, but
people that I know that would say that.
I genuinely don't think they mean it.
Yes.
And I think there's this tendency to exaggerate based on maybe the last year, maybe the last 5 years, but it's actually, if you extrapolate 40 years worth of living and all of the microaggressions that they faced, all of the barriers that they faced, do you really think that your life as a middle-aged white man from a low socioeconomic background is harder than, and it's not about top trumps in terms of oppression, but we have to be realistic sometimes.
But what that tells me, and I can think of two people straight away that would have that conversation with me quite happily. In fact, they would talk it, they would go down that route for a long time, right? But it's a defense. And my question is, when I hear that, is there must be an attack that they are feeling, right? And that's the bit that I'm kind of like, how do we formulate something, or, in a working world where there's this sense of belonging and this sense of inclusivity of this, for me and you, and I think we sing from the same page with this opportunity for everybody, right? This fair opportunity, but not make other individuals feel the opposite of what we are trying to do, which is actually to include.
Absolutely. Again, it's one of the reasons that we focus on data as an organization, because actually the only way to really have rational conversations around this, taking all of the emotion out of it, taking the inflammatory messaging that's in the media often, is to look at the data. So it's like, okay, if you're, again, using that analogy, if you're saying as a white man that you'd rather be a black, lesbian, disabled woman, let's look at the stats. All right, if you're facing the criminal justice system, who would you rather be? In the healthcare system, who would you rather be? Education system, who would you rather be? And I think only by looking at the data points, clear as day, just to understand, okay, what do you think the perceived benefit of being a lesbian woman with a disability, a black lesbian woman with a disability, what do you think the advantage that you get?
And did he answer, may I ask?
Oh, I didn't go there.
You didn't go there.
Okay. I didn't have enough time, and B, it was quite an open setting. I think sometimes it's best to have these conversations on a one-to-one basis. Like I never want to make anyone feel like they're being dressed down or being kind of challenged like that. Everyone's entitled to their view, but sometimes it is about kind of walking backwards from that view, unpicking it, understanding where it comes from. And I think oftentimes, to your point, it comes from this feeling of being attacked. You know, 100%. You feel like you have to defend.
Yeah, well, I think it could be a number of things. It can definitely be I'm feeling attacked. This is uncomfortable for me. You know, this is the opposite of who I am and what I stand for. And actually, I'm the great ally. I get involved in all these things, and I seek to understand. And it can come from a place of entitlement.
Absolutely, and I think there is that.
That is the truth as well.
Saying when you've had so much privilege in your life.
Yeah.
Just not being able to act on that privilege feels like oppression.
Yes. Yes. Amen to that. Yeah. Yes.
Sure. And I think it is kind of this, for me, is quite a short-sighted perception to say, you know, as I said, the last 4 or 5 years have been reasonably okay. I wouldn't even say they're good, just okay for diversity and inclusion. But actually you've got this legacy of decades and decades, even centuries of structural bias playing out, and that's something that you can't necessarily forget in 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely not. And actually my perception is over the last 4 or 5 years, it's not that I've seen huge changes at the top of a lot of these organisations, in founder circles, in investment. It's not. I advocate for all those things for a reason. But what I have seen is there's been spaces that have been created, some safe and some not safe, where people are opening up and talking about their experiences and saying that they'd like this to change. I actually think that's been the biggest change. You know.
And have you seen that universally or just some groups? And I guess I was going to ask you that question in terms of what do you think is needed to invite more white men potentially into this conversation?
I think conversations like this, because for me, in an inclusion environment, and I'm in them a lot, and I was speaking at them a lot, and, you know, as a business and individually, you know, the room is full of really everyone but white males, you know.
Is that frustrating to you as well?
Yeah, very frustrating. And the reason it's frustrating is if we're not in environments that we don't necessarily understand and we're being welcomed into, those are the moments that I'd really love to see individuals taking that step and trying to understand, building fantastic connections, building fantastic relationships, to be able to move the dial for everybody, you know, not just for white males and non-white males, for everybody, you know. So it's very frustrating actually, and the reason that it is so frustrating as well is because the reality is a lot of the decision makers in organisations and a lot of the people that hold budget and a lot of the people that, you know, can make a change are white males. So if anything, you know, if you're a white male demographic, you're in the most wonderful position to have the biggest impact. Yeah. That is the truth. And that person that raised that point about being a white male from an underprivileged background and, you know, versus being a black, lesbian, disabled woman, the reality is, one thing I do know for sure is that he can make a huge impact, big impact for that other woman. Like, that's the reality. And I actually think it's a fantastic position to be seated in. And I know we talk about privilege and talk about all those things, and I also understand some of the negative conversations and it can feel uncomfortable in moments, but I think if I was a white male, that's how I would be looking at it. I'd think, wow, I'm in this wonderful position to really impact.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I'm going to orchestrate this.
Yeah.
And I see that as well. I do see that as well, but I don't see enough of it.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm not 100% convinced that I am good enough a person to say that if I was a white man, I would really care. And I think,
but we're saying it from a standpoint of probably having a different,
100%.
you know,
but
narratives.
I think it is, and this is why I've got so much time for white men that are involved in these conversations, that are leading in this space, because there's really no onus on you to do that. You know, there's for the most part, there's no kind of personal connection, there's no family ties. And I think it takes a special type of person to look outside of their privilege and advocate for people that are not like themselves, and do so with such humility and compassion.
2 words I was going to say. Absolutely, yes.
And it's especially for those in leadership positions, when you look at the likes of the Elon Musks and the Trumps, and there's a certain level of arrogance to some extent.
I would use some different words, but yes.
I was carefully picking my words to say. I think there's a number of words that you can use, but again, it's about what power usually does to people, what status usually does to people, and that typically doesn't make them a better person. It typically doesn't make them more committed to inclusion. So I've got so much time for anybody that is powerful, does have wealth, does have resources, and wants to lean into inclusion rather than just let it rest at that rhetoric level. Because I think there are a lot of people that say things, and they say all of the right things around inclusion, but when it comes to doing the work, putting your money where your mouth is, there's a lot of them that fall short.
Agreed. And I'm thinking about how leadership has changed and influenced this, because I think even when I came into the workplace, which would have been about 20,
you're aging yourself.
20 years, I would have worked as it says young, but in a proper workplace about 20 years ago, and it was ruled with power and control. You know, you respected your boss. Your boss was going to walk over. You were shuffling some papers or looking like you were doing something or running out of the kitchen, or, you know, it was. And don't get me wrong, we're still productive now, right? But in a different way. I feel like the shift is really the servant leader, the compassionate leader, which really plays to exactly what you're talking about. So is this what we're talking about? Is this a new kind of leader as well?
It's interesting, because I when you were describing your journey into the workplace and kind of the ruling with power and control, I don't think I saw that.
We've got different experiences too, and different genders too.
Oh yeah, 100%. But my first kind of person I kind of label as that leader that really influenced me from kind of C-suite level was super humble, and he used to sit behind me. Shout out to David. But
shout out David.
he essentially he was our chair up until a couple of years ago. But he used to be like the most normal boss ever. Like, he wasn't one of these egotistical people. Like, he didn't walk around and puff his chest out. He was really humble, really down to earth, really compassionate as a leader. And I think that really influenced me in terms of my leadership style. And then my line manager was a lady called Jill, and she was no nonsense, but also very fair, like very, very human. She was from like Southeast London, smoked like a chimney. God rest her soul, she's no longer with us, but super compassionate, but just knew her stuff. And I think there's a certain amount of confidence that comes with knowing who you are as a leader and being able to demonstrate what you can do without the need to puff out your chest and rule with like power and control.
It's interesting. I'm thinking how honest and open to be, but you know, we said we were going to be raw, unfiltered, so here we are, right? My first sort of proper job, I was like the milkman's assistant for a bit and did like, you know, worked in shoe and things like that. But my first proper office job was definitely power and control, the boss. And he definitely used to come on to me and one of the girls there. I experienced that in a number of workplaces from the leadership team. So there's definitely an element of power and control there. And I know we've gone off here a little bit.
Nobody ever came under me, unfortunately.
Mac.
But it is,
I don't know what to say.
But I think it's something that I saw lots of in the energy sector as well.
100%. Whereas, and I'm not saying, we know, the workplace has changed vastly. There is no doubt about that. And there's still a lot to be done, right, in different pockets. But I can even see that change just in the short period, if we think about it, relatively short period of 20 years that I've been in the workplace. The things that were normal to me as a 17, 18, 19-year-old girl would not be, I wouldn't expect to, maybe that's because I've grown and I've matured and it would be very, but I wouldn't expect to have those kind of experiences. I did expect it then. I could see it was quite normal to me. So, don't know what route I've gone down here. But we're talking about how leaders, I guess, have evolved during that time.
Yes. Yeah. And I think part of that is kind of demonstrations of new ways of leading. And I think, again, to bring back to the competency, when you feel like you don't have to, again, puff out your chest or demonstrate anything, when you're secure as a leader, that allows you to lead a certain way. And I think even bringing it back to the topic of conversation, as a white middle-aged middle-class man, when you feel like you are in your position by your own rights and because of your own credibility, you shouldn't feel threatened by an agenda to diversify, an agenda to be more inclusive, because you know how good you are in and of yourself, like privilege aside, characteristics aside. If you're really good at your job, inclusion, diversity shouldn't be a threat.
100%. Yeah, it's not, quite honestly. And if anything, you're in the position to make the biggest impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. So final thoughts.
Final thoughts. What was the question again? Let's go back to the question.
Shall I pick it up?
Yeah, get the question. Let's make sure we're answering this question, Matt.
Inclusion or exclusion? Yes. Are white men being left behind?
Yeah. My final thoughts are that white men are absolutely not being left behind. I do think when we're having these kind of conversations, that actually everyone needs to be mindful of how those are being facilitated, and how it's making other people feel, white men included. But my thoughts are that white males often do actually, and can have the biggest impact in this area and in the workplace as leaders as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would say white men are being left behind in acknowledgement of the conversation is happening, but it's either happening without them or it's happening to them. And I say to them in that there's a lot of, I was trying to mention my words, but just to call them out, there's a lot of poor EDI practitioners that position white men as being the problem. It's actually white men can be the problem, but also other people can be the problem. There's nothing to say that you can't have black people that are racist, or women that are sexist, or
definitely
members of the LGBTQ plus community that are homophobic, because there's nothing to say that any one of us can't fall foul of kind of what this inclusive agenda is about. So again, just targeting one group as being the problem is in itself problematic. So I think a lot of it is down to the way that this work is done. However, I think there has to be a willingness to engage. And to my earlier point, if you are confident in your own abilities, diversity and inclusion shouldn't be a threat to you. The only way it should be a threat if you know that your position is intrinsically linked to your identity. So if you think, as a white man, I'm only here because I'm a white man, then absolutely I can see why this would
be threatening.
This would be threatening to you, yeah, absolutely. So I think for me it's about moving beyond identity politics, understanding that we all have something to gain from being more inclusive. For leaders, I think your leadership style develops so much when you have other people to lead, people that will challenge you, people that don't think the same as you. It adds to your toolkit, it adds to what you can achieve. But yeah, I think there's a wider conversation to be had in terms of how we intentionally include white men in this conversation, because as you say, they have a lot of power to make a lot of change.
I have a final thought.
Go on. I don't
I
think
love
that's
that, by
allowed.
the way. It's allowed. It's allowed. I don't like to break the rules. No. If there are white males that are listening to this conversation saying, okay, I feel uncomfortable at times, or I've questioned the things that you're talking about, processes, recruitment processes, is there any advice that we can give to them as individuals, maybe to hopefully not feel that way?
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, it's natural. Like
Yeah.
it's natural to feel uncomfortable. It's natural
Yeah.
to feel uncertain when you talk about things for the first time or do things for the first time. You're likely to use the wrong language. You're likely to trip over your words. But lean into it. I think surround yourself with good people that have really good hearts that are willing to go on this journey with you, and just be open and honest with them. Say, look, I'm really interested in expanding my knowledge, expanding my horizons. Am I able to have open conversations with you? And if they are good people, they will be willing to sit with you, to talk with you, to help you to be able to articulate what it is that you're struggling with, challenge you in certain places. But don't let the fear of discomfort hold you back. You have to kind of lean into the comfort. You have to be discomfort. You have to be willing to go on that journey.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I would echo that. And I think there's another area or another element to this where there's some individuals that feel that they won't get the job now. You know, they're not going to be desirable. And I would say that's absolutely not the case. And I statistically can show that to you from experience and stats. But I think that actually if you go in with the expertise and the experience, the temperament, the leadership style, and you lead with who you are and what you've done, then the right individual and the most credible individual will secure the role. And that's all I've seen time and time and time again over this period of time, even within inclusive recruitment processes. So that is certainly not been the experience that I've had or seen.
Amazing. So any
You're
more
amazing.
final thank you. You too. Any more final thoughts?
Final thoughts.
I'm gonna be here all day.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. I'm pleased that we've touched on it.
Yeah.
I'm pleased that we've touched on it because I think it can sometimes feel taboo, but actually I think there's a real place in a conversation here. And I'd love to see more white males talking about this, and actually just more people individually talking about this, because that is how the dial moves. And that's the only reason these conversations are being had from the first place.
Absolutely. Like, shout out to the white men that are
Definitely
in this space, that continue to be in this space.
Yes.
Despite the criticisms that they face, despite the hardship, the difficulty, the challenge. I think there's a lot of white men doing some really interesting and progressive things.
Definitely. And I know myself, I've even walked into a room. We are wrapping this up. Final thought. I've walked into a room and I've had another woman actually say to me, why are you here? And I'm of the demographic, so I was thinking, okay, so I can only imagine sometimes, you know, having that kind of response. I think it's rare, but I think it can happen. I think we have to acknowledge that. So it's even more important that those individuals are in the rooms and having the conversations that we're having.
Absolutely. Great. Amazing. I think is that it? We wrapped.
Could
Cool.
be more.